Hello, everyone. Today I will be presenting an example AAA question with answers. And the focus on this exercise would be matters to consider. And the other thing that is asked in this question is to evaluate the audit junior's concerns regarding the management of the audit of EAR's company. So the idea is here to present what are the main things to focus on in this exercise, how you should think and how you should approach the AAA exam. And this is regardless whether you want to simply pass it with 50 points or pass it with much higher, like 60 or 70. I personally passed it in my first attempt with about 60 points. And I want to share with you my approach to be able to pass it. And this is also, it doesn't matter if you're going to, in the current December exam session or the March, it doesn't matter because these questions regarding matters to consider or evaluate evidence or evaluate someone's concerns regarding the management of the audit, they could be present anywhere in the exam section. They could be present anywhere in the syllabus, and they could be present, and they have been present in the AAA exam. So starting off, first it says here 50 minutes. So if you want, I could provide to you, you could write in the comment section if you want me to provide you this question, but you could start practicing it. And the reason it says 50 minutes is because this is the maximum time it should take you to pass the exam. So if it takes you 50 minutes, 55 or 60 minutes, it's just too much. The AAA exam is very time intensive, so you should try to time your exercises and you should try to complete them. That is, the section B questions. Each one should be passed for about 45 minutes. And the rest of the hour and a half in the remaining exam should be focused on the question on the section A question, which is, focused on audit risks, but this particular question is not focused on audit risks. So starting off, it is 1st of July 2015. In most questions in the exams, the date, the current date is not something very important. However, sometimes the current date will be very close to the audit reporting date. So if they're very close, usually that short period of time suggests that something might be rushed, audit evidence might not be enough time to collect audit evidence. So keep in mind that the date could potentially be important. So I will try to highlight it. Oh, sorry. Okay. So next, you are the manager of Century, a firm of chartered accountants. You've been temporarily assigned as a manager to the audit of EARS because the engagement partner is out of office. The final audit for the year ended 28 February 2015 is nearing completion. Okay, so the financial year is behind us. And now you're reviewing the audit files and discussing the audit with the junior members of the audit team. The following exhibits provide information relevant to the question. My personal approach is to take the exhibits and the questions one by one. So here it says, using the information provided in exhibit 1 and 2. So basically what I personally do is I first focus on the first question. This is the question in section A here, in subsection A. And then I focus on and read these two exhibits. And after I've completed it, then I read the third exhibit, because if you read all of the exhibits, in considering the time intensity of this exam, you'll get confused, you could get mixed up, you could start answering the wrong question or the wrong exhibit, you could get confused, and worst of all, you'll waste time. So my approach is to just focus either on A and then read the two exhibits, or if you feel more comfortable, you could start with B and read exhibit 3, because that is what it relates to. So in this case, the questions are comment on the matters to be considered, explain the audit evidence you should expect to find during your file review, and in respect of the training costs that have been capitalized into the cost, which will give you 6 marks, the trade receivables recognized in relation to Cherry, and the information provided in Exhibit 3. Evaluate the audit junior's concerns regarding the management of the audit of EARS Co. So basically, this this entire question will give you so that's 25 points. So you'll get similar questions in section B. So that's 2 questions in section B, each one 25 points, giving you 50, and the rest of the 50 points are going to be in section A. So this is an example of a section B question. So the first exhibit, private company. So this is important. So it's not listed. If it's a non-listed company, then the audit requirements, the audit risks are less, because companies that are listed are more likely to be under stringent regulations. They're more likely to be under some sort of manipulation, because the management would want to impress the shareholders. So the fact that it's a private company is something that's okay to highlight. And during the exam, don't forget to highlight anything that you feel is important. It doesn't really take any time. Okay, so equipment for construction. It's sold under a standard design. So standard is important because usually if something is created that is not standard, if your client refuses to buy that product that you manufactured, then you might not be able to sell it if it's not standard, and it will have to be written off from the inventory, or its value would have to be reduced. So whether it's standard or bespoke is something that you should pay attention to. So EARS designs specific items for customers according to the contractually agreed specification. The draft financial statements show revenue, profit, and total assets. So if they give you these 3, you are very likely to have to calculate materiality. Okay, so it is, okay. The second one is the following information has come to your attention during your review of the audit files. During the year, a new range of manufacturing plants was introduced to the factories operated by EARS Co. All factory employees received training from the external training firm how to safely operate the machinery, and this is the total cost. The training costs have been capitalized into the cost of the new machinery, and the finance director argues that the training is necessary in order for the machinery to generate a benefit. After the year-end millennium, a major customer of the EARS that EARS has several contracts of announced insolvency. So that means that a serious supplier with significant contracts, not a supplier, a customer, sorry, is insolvent. That means that receivables might have to be written off, that revenue might significantly fall. If the company has other financial issues or debt, this could create a going concern issue. However, going concern is not something that you should immediately jump to, and a lot of students make this mistake. So just because one customer is lost does not necessarily mean going concern problems. Okay, so Millennium suggests that the company may be able to pay 25 of the amounts. Trade receivables is $120,000 is recognized in the statements of financial position in respect of this customer. So we're not told if the 25% of the amounts is represented by 120,000. So it's a little bit confusing here. And right now we will skip Exhibit 3 and go back to it later. So the answer of the first question, what are the matters to consider? First of all, materiality. You get 3 points. You get at least 1.5 points, maybe 2, if you simply make these simple calculations based on revenue, profit, and assets. And then you have to write a comment. Training costs, which we said are 150,000, are not material to the statement of financial position. This is related to the revenue. So revenue and statement of financial position are related. So they could, however, be material to profit. Usually, if something is beneath 2% of the revenue, it's not material to it. However, if it's above 10% of the profit, it is material to the profit. In order for it to be material to the total assets, it needs to be above 1% of total assets. In this case, it's very low, so it's not material. The only thing it's material to is the profit. The accounting treatment. The training costs are currently recognized non-current assets. This is not in accordance with IS 16 property, plant, and equipment. The reason I have highlighted this is because you are not required in the exam to write any standards. So simply, writing your rote learned knowledge that the training costs should not be capitalized, that the cost of training staff should be treated as an expense always. This is enough. You will not get any points for writing the standards. This is something that the people writing the exam answers in the books do, simply to refer to something, because that is professional to do. However, you're not required to write at this high level. This is very unlikely to be the case with training costs, as the staff will probably have the right to leave the company, meaning that EARS-CO will not receive any subsequent economic benefit. So, because the company does not control the training staff, and the staff could leave at any moment because they have the right to. Of course, they're not slaves. The training should not be capitalized. It should always be expensed. So if you hear training cost, immediately in your mind it should click, it should not be capitalized. Training costs should be treated as an expense in the statement of profit and loss. Evidence in the file should contain a review of the nature of the expense themselves to verify that they're classified correctly and that they are in fact training costs. So you have to review the expenses themselves. You have to review files or the invoice, or maybe ask people who are trained to find out what the training was really about, and whether they were trained or provided something materialistic, so you can confirm the nature of this expense. Testing the entries selected in according to sampling procedures in the audit plan. As I said, invoices, agreement of payment of related payables, and comparing the payables of the invoice to the cash book and back statement. So this basically is evidence that the training was actually paid by your audit client, EARS company. Evidence that a sample of entries are included in the accounts in the correct period. So it's not just about accounting the training cost, but also including it in the correct period. So what's something I would have written here is also perform cutoff procedures to make sure that the invoices were properly accounted in the correct period. Testing for completeness and that all invoices were accrued, that should have been accrued, were accrued for. So this is because, as we said, the financial year ends 28th of February. So if the invoice came, for example, next month in March, that means, as you know from the audit and assurance exam, such invoices should be accrued and should not be posted in in the next financial period, because that would not be that would basically be going over the basic accounting principle that the expenses and revenue should be accounted for the period they relate to. So moving on is the second part of matters to consider, the materiality related to the receivables. So the receivable is not material to the statement of financial position. Again, it is 1%, which is, of course, less than 5, and that's why we ignore it. It is material on, obviously, profit. 30% is a lot. And materiality of total assets, again, it's less than 0.1%. So the only thing we have to look at is the profit. It would be material to the statement of profit or loss if an impairment loss were recognized in relation to it. So basically, we take the 120,000 that was provided, not 25% from the amount, and we divide it by the amounts. In the exam, you have a calculator. So simply use it. These calculations are simple. Overall, the calculations in the advanced audit exams are overall in all of the advanced exams are relatively simple, so you don't have to perform complex calculations like you would have in the more fundamental exams or the financial management exam. The accounting treatment, again, here you have the IFRS that's quoted. You don't have to write the IFRS, you don't have to memorize these numbers. It requires receivables to be recognized at fair value, which is absolutely correct. The fair value for the Cherry Co receivable is 25% that the administration suggests it may be able to pay. For example, $30,000, because $90,000, which is the remaining, should be recognized as an impairment loss in the statement of profit and loss. If you have taken this 90,000 and use the calculations here, you would have still gotten 2 points. Okay, you would have still gotten points. Calculating the materiality on revenue is 90,000 divided by 12.5. Okay, so I skipped the division here. 0.72. The materiality on profit is 22. Again, important. And this is likely to be material to profit for the year. Regarding the inventory, as Cherry Co is a customer, it's possible that EARS is holding an inventory or work in progress that is ordered by Cherry. Century needs to ascertain whether this is the case, and if so, whether the inventory can in fact be sold. So if here is important. As I said earlier, if bespoke products cannot be sold, then they should be written off, or their value should be reduced to the lower, the higher of either net present value or the value after they have been written off. If it cannot be, then it may be impaired and should be written down, recognizing the loss in profit for the year. And again, we have to write the audit evidence related to the receivables. So external documentation confirming the insolvency of the customer, confirmation from the administrator of Cherry that 25 is to be paid, including indication, agreement of the amount owed from the receivables listing to the ledger, review of the inventory documentation, evidence inquiries made of management regarding the value and the potential recoverability of the inventory relating to contracts millennium. So this is basically discuss with management type of evidence. Discussing with management, inquiring with management is generally weak evidence. However, if you can't think of anything else, you could include it and get 1 point. But always when writing audit evidence, write why you're collecting it. So reviewing the documentation, inquiring with management in order to confirm the receivable. In this case, all of these are related to receivables, so you don't have to write it every time. But usually with evidence, don't just write, find the agreement, of the amount owed from the receivables listing to the ledger, but you should also write to confirm its accuracy. In this case, because all of this relates to the receivable, you don't have to write it. But something that I would do is simply make this a little bit longer and explain why I want this evidence. Okay, the reviewers on the exam love when you explain why you're doing something, why it's important, why there's an audit risk, why there's a business risk. Ask the question constantly, every 5 or 10 minutes during the exam, because it will give you extra points that could make the difference between you passing or not. Calculations regarding the amounts to be recognized as an impairment loss. Calculations, basically whether your client EARS has calculated the 30,000, the 90,000 that should be impaired, whether reconciliations have been done. So when there's any reconciliations regarding receivables, payables, you could include whether any reconciliation calculations were made. So reconciling is something that accountants do when it relates to receivables and payables. So question B is relating to the exhibit that we skipped. So concerns from the audit junior. One of the audit juniors voiced concerns over how the audit was managed. He said that he has limited audit experience. Yes, yet he was assigned. He was expecting to attend a meeting at the start of the audit, but no meeting was held. The audit manager was away for the weeks, left a senior in charge. However, the senior was busy with other assignments, so not always available. So the coordination, the organization, the planning, the potential risks that they did not, that the management of the audit did not react on time to changing audit circumstances is increased here. You know, the fact that they're leaving a senior and a junior to handle the audit by themselves, and an audit of a company that has assets of let me see, 78 million. You know, this is quite irresponsible. So this is something that you should highlight. I was given the task of auditing the goodwill which arose on acquisition made during the year. A junior or an intern should not be auditing goodwill because it's complex, requires experience, and goodwill is very subjective. Subjective accounting, subjective standards, subjective related things should not be given to junior staff in the audit team members. This is something that requires specific evidence, experience. It is highly likely for there to be fraud or error. So goodwill, no, it should not be given to juniors. I worked on the audit of inventory, attended an inventory which was complicated, has a lot of work in progress. Again, work in progress is again subjective to some extent. Calculations are complex, so it should not be given only to the junior. As I had been to the inventory count, I was asked by the audit senior to challenge the finance director. So a junior should not communicate and challenge a financial director, because the financial director first may not take the junior very seriously, and secondly, it is not very representative of the audit company. And additionally, a finance director is much smarter and more experienced than a junior, which means they may lie to the junior and the junior might not know. So a junior should not communicate to the finance director. This is something that you should highlight and you should address later. Okay, lastly, we found that the running out of time to complete our audit procedures. The audit senior advised that we should reduce the sample sizes, which is a red flag that the audit evidence will be less appropriate and sufficient because you're reducing the audit evidence. He also suggested that if we picked an item that as a part of our sample for which it would be time consuming and to find relevant evidence, then we should pick a different item which would be quicker to audit. So basically, this is red flags that the quality of the audit will be reduced. If there was a question in this case regarding the audit quality, you would write that the audit quality was compromised because samples were reduced, the management was not present during the audit, people who are less experienced were in charge of the audit procedures, the client could or may not be very important to the current audit firm. So the audit quality, the sufficient and appropriateness of the audit, the quality of the auditor opinion in the final audit report, everything is reduced, which may mean that an internal inquiry may have to be created regarding this audit. However, considering that we're not asked regarding audit quality, we simply have to focus on how the audit evidence has been compromised, what matters could be taken. So it is something that you should consider the audit quality. But if you start writing about audit quality, what should be done, whether what is done when audit quality is compromised, the quality assurance partner. You actually start to answer a question that has not been given to you. You should only answer what you have been asked. If you answer anything else, you get 0 points. So, ethical and self-review threats, selection of the engagement staff. The fact that the junior had only worked on 2 audits is not a problem. However, it's important that they were given the work appropriate to their level of skills and experience. This has not happened here. And then you begin to explain why. The audit planning meeting led by the partner is a crucial part of the audit. It's best way to give the team an understanding of the client and should discuss both the overall strategy, the detailed audit plan, and perhaps going into difficulties of having experience in previous years, which could come up again. So the audit partner here has not done their job. The discussion should focus on what individual members of the team need to do and is important for less experienced members. I know because I have worked myself in an audit firm, so less experienced members should be giving a little bit more attention in order for them to understand better what is expected of them because they're still learning. Audit manager is away. The manager should not give the senior responsibility for the audit while they were away on holiday for 3 weeks. This is also something that should click, that what audit partner goes for 3 weeks on vacation or anything in the middle of the audit season. So this is a big red flag that something was really off here. The audit team or the audit company should have found another replacement manager during these 3 weeks in order for them to substitute the manager that was away. So the audit quality, the procedures, reacting to any changing circumstances could be done on time. It is important that the audit is properly supervised, and it may have been more appropriate for another manager to take responsibility for the audit. Senior was busy. Not only is there a question mark over whether they have experience to manage the audit, the senior is also busy with other excitement and unable to devote sufficient time to this one, and probably not enough time to train the audit junior. It's important that someone is available to supervise the junior members, which is not happening here. It's important that the lack of attention paid both by the manager and the senior has led to the misstatements in respect of the training costs and trade receivables not being picked up by the audit team. Junior auditing goodwill and inventory is, as I said, something that should not happen. It should be given to more senior people from the team. Goodwill is complex area of accounting and should not be given to a junior. The same could be said of inventory when it comes to work in progress. Now, I have done personally inventory counts as a junior auditor. However, work in progress was something always given to the senior. So again, work in progress is complex, and you should click, from the previous audit and assurance exam that this is something that should not be underestimated and should not be given to a junior member of staff. The junior is very unlikely to have developed a judgment. Yes, this is basically explaining in a simple English with a quick sentence why it should not be given to the junior. So you're not just saying it should not be given to a junior person, but you're explaining why, because they're unlikely to have developed a judgment. So always ask the question why. Inventory count. The junior helped the client staff to count raw materials when they should have instead been observing that the client staff were counting them correctly and in accordance with the count procedures. This would imply that the junior had not been properly briefed. Of course, there was no meeting, and this is a relatively basic error. It's highly unprofessional. It is appropriate for a junior to be asked to challenge a client's finance director regarding accounting issue that they're unlikely to fully understand. So a junior should not ask a director anything unless maybe they are supported or in the present in such a meeting with a senior or the audit manager. This should have been done either by the audit manager or the partner, and they would be in position to understand the technical issues involved and will carry with more authority to the client to make the challenge effective. So authority, effective challenge, these are the key words here. The rest of the words in between are filler. And even if you don't write in perfect grammar, you will even if you don't write in perfect grammar in the exam, the person checking the exam will understand you and they will give you points. But if you write perfect grammar but don't answer the question you've been asked, for example, you start explaining what standards should be followed here instead of explaining the issue, you won't get any points. So it's not about a perfect English, it's about answering the question you've been asked and answering why. Running out of time. So the audit time budget should allow staff enough time to complete the audit with the required quality. Again, using the keyword quality will give you points here, but you should not start explaining what leads to better audit quality. You should not start explaining a 5-sentence paragraph because you will be wasting time. It's possible that the lack of supervision of the audit team's work has led to the audit being conducted inefficiently, with inadequate monitoring of progress and discussion of issues as they arise. So pressure of time is something that contributes in or increases audit risk. You don't have to write contributor. You should write increases audit risks because there will be less time to perform efficient and proper procedures in the final report, maybe with reduced quality. So you can write the answer here in a couple of ways with short sentences and still get full marks. Reduction of sample sizes. It's clearly unacceptable to reduce sample sizes as a way to save time. The sample sizes should have been designed to gather sufficient appropriate evidence, and reducing the sample size increases detection risk and the risk of the auditor giving the wrong opinion. So you're simply mentioning the final opinion in the final report, but you do not start explaining. For example, there are students that make the mistake of starting to explain what an audit report would include, or if there's a misstatement that's material, how it would change the audit report. No, you're not asked that here. You're simply asked why reduction of the sample sizes would cause an issue of the final report, of the opinion, of the quality, and why basically it reduces the professional level and the ethical level of the auditor. So you could know a lot about the audit opinions, but again, you're not asked that here, so you should not answer it. And finally, basis of sample selection. Selecting a sample on the basis of ease of finding evidence is not appropriate. So it's not about making your job easy, it's about doing what's right to get sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. Yes, this might increase detection risk, as it means by definition that those items for which evidence is not readily available or might not even exist would not be tested. So you're explaining why the basis is wrong, because the right items might not be tested. So you might know this, but if you don't write it, if you don't answer the question why is this not an appropriate basis, you will not get the extra point. So if you write the first sentence, you could get 1 point, but the second sentence would give you the extra second point. And sometimes that's the difference between passing the exam and not passing it. So the conclusion, always write conclusions in section B questions and all of the section A sub questions, because that will give you an extra half or 1 mark. The litany of failures above suggested engagement has not been adequately supervised. That the audit work was inadequate in some areas, so it could have been adequate in other areas, but we're saying that it was inadequate partially. A detailed review should be performed so that any other shortcomings can be addressed. The review, I could have personally written that it should have been done by another partner or by a quality review partners who manages the quality and reviews the quality of the engagements in the audit firm. In this case, even if you don't write it, you would still get a half a mark for this sentence. Doubt is also cast over the sufficiency of the firm's quality management procedures. This matter should be referred to the relevant partner for consideration. And with this, we are done. And if you write basically all of this as answers, you will get full marks. Even if you skip a few things or don't write the standards and get a little bit of less marks, it's important to get above 13 points. So if you get above 13 points for this question, the other section B question, that's 26. And if you get 25 or 26 in the section A question, you would pass the exam. So if you have any questions, please ask me in the comment section below. I do offer tutoring, so if you are interested, please write and we can contact. Thank you for watching.